Here's Jesus. Anyway.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, we got to bring that up for sure. And I don't know if Kate's gotten enough. All right, we are live.
We are live. Welcome everybody to live Q&A. This is Pastor on the Recovering Heretic. 2 whole weeks in a row. Shocking.
I know, it's a trend.
The world might end. Hi, Dan.
Hi.
What is our topic today?
Our topic today is what three kings?
What three kings?
What three kings? Because I want to talk more about them.
Yeah.
And the fact that from my perception, as the house heretic, I don't think that story fits with the rest of Jesus' life. It's like the author is like, well, I got to do this. I'm going to cram this thing in, even though it messes with the continuity of the rest of my story. So we'll get to that.
Okay.
But first, some of the logistics, because we actually have a question right up front.
Okay.
And that is, how long did it take the Magi to make that journey?
I don't know how long, but if you kind of think about distance-wise, they're walking from Iran, what's now Iran, central Iran, to Jerusalem, basically.
So you locate them in Persia.
Yeah.
I mean, does Matthew say they're from Persia?
No, but they're Magi, and that's the word that's used for Zoroastrian priests and astrologers.
Okay.
So, and Zoroastrians are in Persia, therefore, almost certainly. And at the east, it kind of means Persia in Bible day speak.
Okay. It was just...
that is the east,
Yeah.
So... Persia and beyond is kind of when we're talking about. So if you kind of guess they're coming from central Iran and they had to walk, a guy riding swiftly on horse can do 20 miles a day. From there you can do the math.
Okay.
And they were probably not just 3 dudes riding quickly, but a donkey train of people.
Yeah. A whole caravan.
Right.
A retinue.
Right, a retinue. So think slower, probably, and than that, and then you can do the math from there. So
we kind of celebrate Epiphany a little early, because the math tells me it was more than 12 days.
Well, it depends on when it doesn't tell us when they started, when they observed the stars rising. Right?
So this could have presaged the actual birth.
Right, could have presaged the birth, right? Could have gotten them started 6 months ahead, who knows, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. Although then we get into my continuity issue, right? Because the shepherds don't see the star.
Right.
Until the birth happens.
Yep, they don't, but they're not the shepherd. God reveals himself differently to different people, right? And so...
Yeah, a star's kind of hard to hide, though.
Well, was it actually a star, or what supernova, or what was it?
Yeah, well, actually, let's get into that then. What biblically, what do you what does it biblically seem to be, and versus astronomically, what could it have been?
So it's probably it's not a planet, I'll put it this way. It's probably not an actual physical star or astral phenomena, because astral phenomena, because of the rotation of the Earth, move east to west, not west to east, or west to east, not east to west.
Okay.
So the star would go this way, and they're going that way, right? So it's probably not that. Some people think it's a comet. Could be, I tend to think you're not supposed to get... Matthew is very unconcerned with its astrological phenomena nature.
Yeah.
He's not an astronomer. There's a big bright light that's saying go here. Some early church writings will talk about it as an angel, a very bright angel that's, guiding them, right? So it could be that, something like that. Or if you're an ancient alien person, it's a starship.
I'll go with that. That ties in with my feelings about Ezekiel.
Right. Yeah, it's a starship.
Okay, so we got that.
There's a great comic online called XKCD, and he does a pathway the Magi would have taken depending on what astral phenomena it was.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And they're very weird shapes that lead you in very weird places. So
that's true, because if it was an actual astronomic phenomenon, you get precessing, recessing.
Yeah, right.
Oh, now I'm going to have to start plotting that out.
Yeah, you can.
Oh, I'm down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the other thing is, Kate had mentioned that there are also some scholars who feel that this didn't actually take place during Christ's infancy. So that it may have been that Jesus was a toddler by the time the Magi made their observations, got together, put their packages together.
Right. It says he's still in Bethlehem, so that tends to suggest... Well, the very next story after this is Herod goes and he does what's called the slaughter of the innocents, where he in order to try and kill Jesus, he kills all, and Herod says, hunt for anybody under the age of 2, is what he says. So if you think about it that way, then Jesus's maximal age is 2. His lowest possible age is 12 days. Like he's a 2-week-old. So he's somewhere in that
zone.
2-week to 2-year-old zone.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about something that happened 2,000 years ago, that's pretty dang close.
Yeah, close enough.
Yeah.
I guess. Well, and because that brings up, we celebrate isn't the right term, but recognize the innocence or the slaughter of the innocents. And if it's immediate and only for infants, then Bethlehem's not that big a place. That'd be like 2 kids.
Yeah, right. This is why, people will be like, well, why is it never recorded in history? It's like, well, probably because it was like, not that any death of children isn't barbaric, it is, but, you're not talking thousands of kids, hundreds of kids, you're talking tiny little village worth, wasn't important enough to record, except for the Bible, which is kind of the point.
Yeah. Although wouldn't it also play in that, because you've mentioned before that children weren't seen the way we see them today, that you weren't really a valid human until you were like 13?
Yeah, that is true, but still, a king ordering the slaughter of random children would be bad.
Okay. So that only applied to, because what was the rule? As a father, you were allowed to kill your child?
A father had legal rights to kill his child up until they were 13 in the Roman world. But that's a little different than like killing somebody else's kid. That's your authority as father over your own children.
Gotcha. So there's still a line outside of your own.
outside of your own kids. Yes.
Yeah. But I'm not sure I would have liked the Roman world.
It's a harsh world. It is an uncompromisingly brutal world.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. On that heavy thought,
I'm
going to jump to something else.
Yeah.
I'm going to get to the literary aspect. And I know you always get on me about that.
Yeah.
Because I don't like that there's no inner dialogue going on and that kind of thing for character development.
Yeah.
In this particular case, I really feel like, to me, if I was the editor, right, and someone was submitting Jesus' story to me as a biography, I would have edited out the Epiphany because it doesn't fit the rest of the narrative in the theme of the narrative. I'll get to that whole part, but beginning with its very insertion seems so forced, like Matthew is just trying to, Matthew's always looking at Isaiah and always trying to figure out how does Jesus' story fit Isaiah's prophecy. And to me, this is one of the ones that seems forced.
Yeah.
Isaiah has this line about these guys coming on camels.
Continue talking. I need a Bible, though. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Continue talking.
And so he throws the story of the Epiphany in just so we meet the qualification of Isaiah's prophecy.
Well, there might be part of that, yes. Continue.
So that's what to me, it just seemed forced.
Yeah.
In that idea. And then I have a couple specific things about what Isaiah said, but that's the general part. And so I just wanted to get the reaction on that. Because Jesus is poor, and the being poor is such a critical part of the Jesus narrative.
Yeah.
And that it's so special that divinity goes to the lowest of the low.
Yep. Well, and that's.
But then you have these guys, and he's given wealth and riches, and then there's no mention of that later. It's like, hi, here's a treasure chest of gold. Here's a treasure chest of myrrh. You know,
maybe Joseph blew it on a timeshare scheme.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
You know,
and that's what it makes it sound like. You know, an ostrich egg farm.
Right.
You know,
who knows?
So like 2 days after the Three Kings, the scam artist came in.
Right. Possibly. You know, or the Romans or somebody appropriated it. Well, truthfully, again, the very next thing they have to do is they have to get up and run.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
so maybe they take the treasure back with them.
Well, maybe they couldn't take it with them, right? You know, an angel says, "Get up and go this very night." You know, right? That's what the. So my bet, honestly, story-wise, is they become refugees instantly after this, and there's no credit card accounts, right?
Yeah.
So like, and no traveler's checks. So, you know, like modern refugees, they have to get up and go.
Yeah.
Immediately.
So Joseph like leaves it in the care of his family.
Right, or he just leaves it in the house. Who know, you know, there's not enough time. The angel says, Herod's soldiers are coming. They're going to be here at dawn. You need to be at least into the Sinai. You know,
the family in the house,
right,
conveniently takes it.
Yeah, conveniently takes it. You know, or you know, he's like, well, we can't carry that, Mary. You know, it's a wonderful gift, but you know,
we got space for 2 drachmas.
Right, we got, you know, it's the clothes on our backs, and we got to make it to Egypt. You know.
Yeah.
So that would be my bet, honestly. Okay. It's where it goes.
I could go with that, but that should have been included in the story, so we'd have the sense of loss.
The sense of loss.
Pathos.
Matthew doesn't care about that.
No, it drives me crazy. Yeah.
Okay, I guess I would say I think this is why everybody needs to read the Begats. You know, the this person was the son of this person.
Yeah.
Because they actually say something important, right? Which presages this moment.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
You know, so we're gonna start. This is Matthew chapter 1, verse 2. Or verse 1, we'll just start right there. A record of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham was the father of Isaac. Isaac was the father of Jacob. Jacob was the father of Judah and his brothers. Judah, the father of Perez and Zerah, whose mother was Tamar. Perez was the father of Hezron. Hezron was the father of Ram. Ram was the father of Amminadab. Amminadab was the father of Nahshon. Nahshon was the father of Salmon. Salmon was the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab. Boaz was the father of Obed, whose mother was Ruth. Obed was the father of Jesse, and Jesse the father of David. And David was the father of Solomon, whose mother had been Uriah's wife. It goes on for a while after that.
Yeah.
But this illustrates my point. So Matthew does this genealogy, which we never read because it's incredibly boring.
Yes.
But there's a really important, this is why you need to read it, because it makes a really important theology point. There are 4 women listed in Matthew's genealogy.
And that stands out, right? You get all this list of men, but every now and then whose mother was.
Right. You get these 4 women who are listed especially, right? And so
Ruth I recognize.
Ruth you recognize, right? So Ruth isn't an Israelite. She's a Moabite. Right. She's a foreigner, right? Similar with Rahab. She's a Canaanite who converts.
Ah.
Rahab is a Canaanite, you know. And she's the one who lets the spies down from the basket at Jericho.
Yeah.
You know, her. You know, that's who it is. So she's a Canaanite, you know, and I could say other things about all those other 2 women. But the point being, already in chapter 1 in the opening verse, you know, Matthew has gone to great lengths to say that there is this non-Israelite component to this story, right? Embedded already in Jesus's family tree. Right? You've got 2 women who are not Israelites, you know, prominently named.
Yeah.
In his lineage, you know.
Now, was Matthew's audience Gentile as well? Is that what
probably a mixed congregation? It's probably more Jewish than given how focused he is on. So Matthew's overall point is that Jesus is the promised Messiah prophesied by the Old Testament. That's kind of his thesis of his
whole gospel.
His whole gospel,
yeah.
Right? You know, and that the church constitutes including an inclusion of the Gentiles into Israel. You know, this is kind of his whole point. But a huge component of that is that as the promised Messiah brings in the the nations, doesn't execute them, but brings them in, and so from the very beginning, Matthew's already showing, hey, Jesus has these non-Israelite lineage in his blood, then in chapter 2, you get these non-Israelites are coming, so it's not nearly as out of left field. It's just we don't read the begats.
Yeah.
Whereas the begats tell us actually something really important point about what Matthew's trying to point out about how God includes people that shouldn't be included,
So in this particular case, why Persia? Why Persian Magi?
They are the foreigner of foreigner, the stranger of stranger. They're not Israelite. They're
They're not Roman. They're not from the empire.
Not from the empire. They worship another god. They're doing a practice that's just actually forbidden in the Old Testament. Astrology is one of those no, don't do it practices. So they kind of represent the people who are just not abiding by God's law in any way, shape, or form.
So they are supposed to be as far away.
Yeah, they're as far away as you possibly could theologically, spiritually, ethically. And yet God takes time to bring them to God, to this newborn king.
Well, Steve wants to know who told the wise men that the star would lead them to the chosen one then?
This is something that's different stars meant different things, and so a sudden appearance of a bright light, I'm sure in their magic formula, a new king,
Yeah.
right? That's a conclusion they probably drew themselves.
Okay. It seemed like so many times, especially with ancient astrologers, anything unusual in the celestial sphere portended bad things.
It could. Well, I mean...
But in this case, it's the opposite.
It's neutral. I think we undercut how neutral it is. It's neither good nor bad. It's just an event.
Okay. So they're coming to check it out just as much as anything else.
Right, as much as anything else, right? It's an event. It's not... And there are bad components to it. Like I said in my sermon, it's pretty dangerous to tell the currently ruling king, there's a new one. They tend to...
Especially a king who's already got a history of wiping out his own kids.
Right, especially a king as paranoid as Herod, has there's a danger there, and so I don't think it is entirely good. It's dangerous, but it's an event,
And you've said before that Herod's history of killing his own children is documented. That's
There was a well-known joke in the Roman Empire that it was better to be a pig in Herod's household than one of his kids, because he was Jewish, so he wouldn't eat a pig, but he had executed his own children.
Wow.
And so the Romans, being the notoriously unpolitically correct people that they are, had a joke about it.
Yeah, Rome.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So in that regard, Matthew was preaching to an audience who would understand that reference all the more than we would.
Yes.
And the impact of it.
Right. They would understand the danger of saying this,
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Renee wants to know, was mysticism culturally common, or was that primarily pursued by royalty? Like today, it is more common for regular people to get into astrology and spiritualism and all that, but was that more of a royal thing?
There would be common people who would have, your star chart read, or, or some kind of the oracle would speak, or, whatever, that kind of thing, So it was pretty common, widespread,
Now, did that have anything to do with and we talked about this before, as far as the fact that in a lot of regards, it wasn't the miracles that set Christ apart, which is what we focus on today. It's like, oh, he performed miracles, so he must have been magic.
Right.
Or divine. But back then, miracle workers were a dime a dozen. It's kind of like the Princess Bride, right? You could go down, there was a miracle worker on every block.
Right.
So, and I guess one of the shocks of Jesus was that he did his miracles for free.
Right. They're free, right.
And it's not that they were miracles, it's just he charged nothing.
Right, yeah.
And that would seem to tie into this with the mysticism then, because it seems like a lot of people wanted miracles. You could make a living being a miracle worker. And that would seem to have to be at the common level, not just the royal level.
Right, yeah, I mean, that is part of it, right? Yeah. Usually you go to the astrologers. They don't come to you, as part of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I guess that puts another light on too. What was it, Simon, the magician who wanted to buy?
Yeah, in the book of Acts, Simon the magician tries to buy the Holy Spirit. Yes. Yeah.
Because as a practicing magician, he would have seen miracles as just another scam.
Yeah.
I guess.
Right. Yes. From which we get the sin of simony, which is the buying and selling of church offices.
Oh, that's where that comes from.
Yep.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
All right. Another epiphany.
So the sin of simony.
Sort. I like that. Back to Isaiah.
Mm-hmm.
First, I want to get, since Renee brought up the royalty issue,
Yep.
Especially like reading today's reading of Isaiah, which is setting us up for the epiphany.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of Isaiah's language focuses on things that only rich people would be familiar with. Like in this quote, he's talking about nursemaids and a couple other things like thoroughbred camels, things that commoners just would not be aware of. So who was Isaiah's audience? Was Isaiah's audience royalty as opposed to the common Israelite?
No.
And if not, why was he talking above the common Israelite's head in that regard?
Well, he's talking about he's using all that language to describe, even if you're poor, right, you understand what the best of the best is. So he's saying, like, this part of Isaiah, the people have returned home from exile, and they have found that Jerusalem is not, for 70 years they've been in exile in Babylon, and they've been hearing how great Jerusalem was. They've been hearing "Remember When" from their grandparents, right? Remember when we had our own kingdom, and there was the temple, and there was the king, and yada yada yada. And
and 70 years isn't that long, so you wouldn't doubt the accuracy.
You wouldn't doubt the accuracy, right? Grandpa or great grandpa told me, and so they're allowed to go home, right? They're allowed to go home, and they come home and they find that Jerusalem is nothing like that, right? It's a bombed out, doesn't even have a wall. It's a bombed out village where, there's no wall, there's no temple, everything's in ruins. It's a disaster. They come back to how the Babylonians left it, and so they are very much struggling with, we thought this would be more glorious than it was, than it is, and do we lose heart and hope because this seems like so much work, and so this last third of Isaiah, its message is, the first part of Isaiah is a message of Babylon's coming, you're going to be destroyed. Sorry. Not sorry. And then the middle part is you're going to be allowed to go home, and then this last third is home will be restored, is kind of, and so, Isaiah is then using this language to say in this context, I know it looks like a mess, but there will come a day when, because I've done something, it will be restored to all its glory, is the message of Isaiah, Yeah. So that's kind of why he's using language that everybody would recognize as, it's going to be the best of the best.
Yeah.
It's going to be the best iPhone, the best, like that kind of, even if you're poor, you understand, right? It's that kind of stuff.
Well, you mentioned that Isaiah writes like in 3 different stages.
Yeah.
And that makes me wonder, because you've mentioned before that Daniel, a couple of the other prophets, it wasn't really just one person who wrote them. Was Isaiah just one person, or was it a couple of people?
It would be a long life.
That's why I'm asking, yeah.
If it was one person.
Yeah, and we're past the point of Methuselah and when people had these extraordinarily...
Scholars will divide Isaiah into what they call first, second, and third Isaiah. And first Isaiah is chapters 1 through 39. And that seems to be connected in some way to the court prophet for the king Hezekiah, whose name is Isaiah. Okay. Right? He's the official court prophet for King Hezekiah and his successors, Then chapters 40 through 56, kind of thereabouts. The tone very suddenly shifts in chapter 40. It's a dramatic break, and so we call that second Isaiah. And you know second Isaiah because this is the piece of Isaiah that Handel set to music in the Messiah.
Okay.
Comfort, oh comfort my people, rejoice, he shall purify the sons of Levi, all that kind of stuff comes out of second Isaiah.
Much more upbeat and hopeful.
Yeah, because that's the piece that is, you've been in exile for 70 years, specifically, I'm going to let you go home soon, is kind of, is the basic message. And then 60 to 66, 57 to 66 is what we call third Isaiah, which is you've been home and you realize that home's kind of a mess. And, how do we be Israel in a home that's not glorious? Which is a good message for us, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very good message.
Right. So he's saying, I will, Zion, so this is Zion will be restored, to all its glory because of my action, and everybody will come and see it.
Cool.
Yeah.
And we're just about out of time again. This went really fast. So I'll save my big literary complaint about Epiphany for next year. We'll hold on to that.
It comes up every year.
It does. It's a good thing about that.
Yeah.
But so I want to end on a trivia note. Because it just struck out at me with Isaiah. And then Steve has another question just popped up, so we'll get through that too.
Yeah.
But since we're on Isaiah, what was the big deal about camels? Because Isaiah in today's reading makes a big deal about camels. From Midian and Ephah, is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, Ephah.
Midian and Ephah.
Yeah.
Were they the Lamborghini of camels in the ancient Mideast?
Midian is like...
Because he's very specific. They're these camels.
It's like Jordan into Saudi Arabia, kind of like areas where you're talking about. So there's lots of camels there. It's to symbolize foreign territory.
Okay. So it's not that these are luxury camels.
Right. No, it's not that it's the luxury camel line, but it's this is the
so
foreigners.
Electric humps, you can move up and down.
The foreigners are bringing you stuff. Kind of the overall.
So message. Reinforcing that again.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Yes. Again. Hebrew parallelism, right? So it's poetry to say the same thing slightly differently.
Yeah.
In Hebrew.
Gotcha.
So, yes. So Hebrew parallelism.
Like our donkey and our foal.
Yeah.
So Steve's question is, shepherds show up.
Yeah.
And there's 3 kings. I mean, you get this mixture. Is this normal?
I will keep in mind. It doesn't say there's 3. It says there's 3 gifts.
It
doesn't actually say there's 3 kings, but all it says is that there are multiple, if you read your Bibles very carefully. You get the full...
mingling with the commoners here.
Right? But, that's what Jesus does, is he breaks, Jesus is doing 2 things already in his birth that he will do the rest of his career. It's like, here this guy already is associating with people he shouldn't associate with, people like lowly shepherds.
And shepherds were the lowest of the low.
Yeah,
right?
They're kind of like biker gangs, the ancient world. So here he is already associating with shepherds and foreign kings, who practice dark arts and, are dangerous, probably condemned by the Old Testament. So here's he already doing that, right? And here Jesus is, the other thing Jesus always does is he breaks down. The book of Ephesians says, by his death and his blood, the dividing wall between us has been broken down. And so here dividing walls are between foreign courtly kings and lowly shepherds are being broken down, right? Just by him existing, right? He's a walking, talking quantum nexus. This is very presence alters reality. Yeah. Kind of around him.
Now you're talking my language.
Yeah. See, there you go.
Cool. Right. Excellent.
Yep.
So on that note. Thank you.
Yep.
And more to be learned next Epiphany.
Next Epiphany. It comes every January 6th. So see you, folks.
Be there. Bye.